Hello, welcome to the remote video inspection training best practices. This is the introductory video for a series of 5 in total. My name is Jennifer Stoloff. I work at Econometrica, and I'm with Tom Fian, who will be our lead trainer today. These videos will give you some basics on how to conduct this type of HCV HQS inspection. There'll be 4 additional videos that will cover specific topics, and these will all be available on the HUD Exchange. Tom, I'll turn it over to you now to introduce yourself and start the presentation.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Tom Fian, and welcome to the Housing Choice Voucher HQS Remote Video Inspection Best Practices. In these slides, we'll be presenting to you the overview and the inspection protocols. Next slide, please. Introduction. There's been a lot of changes because of COVID-19. So the COVID-19 pandemic and advances in technology have ushered in a new way to conduct Housing Choice Voucher, otherwise known as HCV, Housing Quality Standards, also known as HQS inspections. Smartphones and tablets with advanced video streaming make it possible to conduct a remote video inspection. We'll use the term RVI for the HQS inspection. An RVI occurs when an inspector performs an HQS inspection from a remote location using video streaming handled by a proxy at the inspection site. The proxy follows the directions of the HQS inspector through the entire inspection process. In a building inspection service company, otherwise known as BISCO survey, of 19 public housing authorities, PHAs, conducted in February of 2021, all respondents said RVIs will be a useful tool in the post-COVID-19 age, but will not replace the on-site inspection. Next slide. A little bit of a history of subsidized housing. It all started back in 1937 with the 1937 Housing Act. Then we move along to 1974. That's when the 1974 Housing and Community Development Act was enacted. This was a change in strategy by HUD, moving from a project-based subsidy to a tenant-based subsidy. In 1998, the Housing Quality and Work Responsibility Act was passed. Then we move along to 2016, we have the Uniform Physical Conditions Standards for Vouchers, otherwise known as UPCSV. Demonstration was enacted. And then in 2019, we have the National Standards for the Physical Inspection of Real Estate, otherwise known as the NSPIRE demonstration. And then we move along to 2020, we have the Office of Public and Indian Housing, PIH, notice allowing RVIs for Housing Choice Voucher programs. To provide the best practices, scope is to provide guidance to PHAs when implementing RVIs for their Housing Choice Voucher program, to discuss scheduling, coordinating, documenting, conducting, and processing for the RVIs, and to present a standardized program that addresses how to prepare for, conduct, and participate in a Housing Choice Voucher Housing Quality Standards RVI inspection. The goal of the Housing Choice Voucher program is to provide decent, safe, and sanitary housing at an affordable cost to low-income families. HQS helps the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and PHAs accomplish this goal, including by defining standard housing. HQS establishes the minimum quality criteria for the health and safety of program participants. All units must meet HQS to participate in the Housing Choice Voucher program. Regulations that cover HQS, and as you can see, there are quite a few. It starts with the Housing Quality Standards Regulations found in 24 CFR 982. The lead-based paint regulations are found in 24 CFR Part 35.110. Chapter 10 of the Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook otherwise known as HQS, Chapter 17 of the Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook, Special Housing Types. The Federal Register CMAP Final Rules, dated September 10th, 1998. Housing Choice Housing Quality Standards Inspection Long Form, HUD 52580-A, with the summary page. Also, there's the HQS Inspection Short Form, HUD 52580. Then we have the Public Housing Authority's Administrative Plan, State and Local Building and Housing Codes, notice PIH 2011-29, Housing Authorities, Electrical Outlets Guidance, notice PIH 2013-17, Use of Photos to Improve Housing Quality Standards Oversight, Federal Register, Housing Opportunities Through Modernization Act of 2016, otherwise known as HOTMA, and we have PIH Notice 2020-5 and 2020-13, Revised 1 PHA waivers, and then lastly we have PIH Notice 2020-31 RVIs for the Housing Choice Voucher programs. HOTMA life-threatening deficiencies. These are defined as natural or liquefied petroleum, gas or fuel leaks. Any electrical condition that could result in shock or fire, inoperable heating systems, utilities not in service, conditions that present imminent possibility of bodily injury, blocked egress, inoperable toilet, missing smoke detectors, missing carbon monoxide detectors, missing damaged or expired fire extinguishers, misaligned chimney venting, and lastly, deteriorated lead-based paint.
Hi, Tom. This is Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
I just have a question about these. So how did these get defined to be these specific things? Are there any other things that we should be thinking about related to this?
The ones we're looking at now for HOTMA life-threatening, these are deficiencies that we would define as causing imminent health and safety to the resident. These would be immediate. Now, there are other deficiencies that we'll be discussing as we go through the Housing Choice Voucher HQS inspections, but those were not particularly life-threatening. These are deficiencies that should be repaired, but the ones we're looking at right now can cause immediate bodily injury to the person or could cause damage to the building. So these are the ones that have to be fixed within 24 hours.
Within 24 hours. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for clarifying.
RVI, the HQS Inspector. Let's discuss this one. The HQS inspections are conducted by a PHA's HQS Inspector or a contract inspector to ensure that the potential and current HCV program units meet the minimum performance and acceptability requirement in each of the 13 key housing quality aspects. Remote video HQS inspections are conducted by the PHA's HQS inspector or a contract inspector from a remote location using video streaming technology with a person, i.e. The proxy, operating the camera at the inspection site to ensure that the units meet minimum performance and acceptability requirement in each of the 13 key housing quality standards aspects. Now, there are three types of inspections that that are done in the Housing Choice Voucher program. We have the initial inspection, we have the annual or the biannual inspections, and we have special inspections. That would be, for example, a complaint inspection. The remote video inspector requirements, and there are quite a few, as you can see, must be a certified HQS inspector, must complete the free online lead-based paint visual assessment training course, must have a fully charged high-resolution laptop with a large screen or monitor, or a data collection device, otherwise known as DCD, i.e., and a standalone tablet or a smartphone. must have HUD Form 52580-A, otherwise known as the long form, or the 52580, otherwise known as the short form, or a DCD, data collection device, loaded with the HUD-approved HQS software. Must have a reliable internet connection, such as a Wi-Fi or cellular, 4G or better. Must have a clear script to direct the proxy. Must use a systematic approach to inspect each inspectable area and system. Must practice the RVI before going live.
And Tom, I just wanted to let people know that the scripts, we will have sample scripts available for people to use that will also be available on the HUD Exchange as part of this training series.
Great. Okay, next slide. The remote video inspector giving instructions, and this is very important. The ability to give instructions is a skill that can be developed and proactively managed by the remote video inspector. A disregarded instruction or misstep can lead to a loss of efficiency, compromise the quality of the RVI, negatively impact the proxy experience, and most of all, can have a health or safety related consequence. Use two-way communications to check for understanding and agreement between the remote HQS inspector and the proxy, especially as to their respective roles and responsibilities. Giving clear instructions. This is very important. Use direct, clear, and specific commands. Give skill-appropriate instructions. Give instructions one at a time. Use appropriate tone and do not lose your cool. Keep explanations simple. Repeat your directions if needed. Give the proxy time to process the information. And break the RVI into what we call manageable chunks of activity.
Tom, what does it mean to give skill-appropriate instructions?
Well, you might have a person who has very limited knowledge on construction materials, has very limited knowledge on looking at an electrical outlet or checking a garbage disposal along those lines. So you have to gear your presentation to what you feel is the skill of the person so they can understand the instructions that you're giving them.
And when you say to break it into manageable chunks, does that mean you would take breaks, or can you do the inspection over more than one day, or do you need to do it all in the same period?
Well, the idea is that the inspection would take about an hour to do. That's what we're going to recommend, that the proxy prepare for an hour. And what we want to do in meaning breaking it into manageable chunks is when they're looking at a door, we don't want to quickly have them move to looking at walls and ceilings. We want them to spend a little time looking at the doors so that we can record the information that we see.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. The proxy requirements must be a landlord, property representative, tenant, or an adult associated with the tenancy and at least 18 years of age. If a minor, must be accompanied by an adult. Must complete the free online lead-based paint visual assessment training course if the unit was built before 1978 and if a child under the age of 6 resides there, or if there's a poisoned child living there. Must provide email address or phone number and a preferred RVI platform, and must have a fully charged high-resolution smartphone or tablet with a camera.
Tom, what happens if there is a language barrier with a resident or the tenant?
Then we would recommend having a proxy there, maybe an adult family member that is familiar with with the English language, and then we could direct them to do the remote video inspection.
And if there was a child in the house who could serve as translator, is that okay?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's a very good idea.
And then, so if I needed to take the lead-based paint training, where can I find that? Do you know?
You would go on to HUD.gov, or you would go to EPA.gov, and you could locate those.
Great.
Now, continuing with the proxy requirements, must have a reliable internet connection, such as a Wi-Fi or cellular, 4G or better, or their device, on their device and at the inspection location. Must be able to follow the remote inspector's directions. Must be able to smell natural gas, methane gas, or noxious gases. Now, methane gas and natural gas doesn't have a particular odor, but the utilities companies put a chemical in it to give it an odor, and it's otherwise known as skunk oil, and you're able to detect that odor very quickly. Next, must have a tape measure, flashlight, or a two-prong outlet tester, ground fault circuit interrupter, otherwise known as a GFCI outlet tester, and a long stick to check smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, also to check auxiliary lights and emergency lights if they're there.
So Tom, how would I get all these tools? I mean, I have a tape measure, and I think I have a flashlight, but I don't have these other tools.
That's a very good question. As we've done our surveys with public housing authorities, we found that some housing authorities have their maintenance person or their inspector drop off the tools at the inspection location. Other housing authorities have the proxy come over to the housing authority office and pick up the tools, but the housing authorities will provide the tools.
Oh, that's great. So I don't have to go out and buy anything for this if I'm the proxy.
No, you don't. Receiving instructions, very important. Following the instructions is important for making the RVI simpler, ensuring that the inspection is done effectively, eliminating confusion and saving time. When instructions and directions are properly followed, the RVI inspection will be successful. It is very important for the proxy to follow instructions and directions during the RVI. If they do not, many unnecessary and unwarranted side effects may occur, including missing the possibility of an imminent health and safety hazard. Receiving the instructions, very important to listen carefully, take your time. We're not in a marathon here. We want to take our time so we can gather all the information correctly. Follow the remote inspector's instructions and directions. Ask questions if you do not understand the instructions or directions. Please do not feel that you're imposing on the inspector by not asking questions. This is a two-way communication, so it's very important that you ask questions. Speak up if for some reason you cannot do what is asked. Have a positive attitude and take care of your part of the inspection, and do not worry about the inspector's role. Scheduling the inspection. The remote inspector will use the standard HQS procedures for scheduling the RVI. The HQS inspector will give the proxy the information that describes the RVI, discusses the proxy's responsibilities, and describes how to provide and conduct the RVI and receive the inspection results. The inspector will provide a contact number and email address for landlords and tenants to discuss questions or concerns. The PHA will deliver tools to the proxy as necessary. As we mentioned, also sometimes the proxy picks up the tools at the PHA's office. The next bullet says the remote inspector will call the proxy the morning of the inspection at the phone number provided to establish the appointment window. The remote inspector will initiate the RVI call to the proxy at the scheduled time on their preferred platform or application, and will conduct an inspection remotely. Due to unpredictable workloads, the inspector may call as much as 15 minutes before or 15 minutes after the agreed upon inspection time. Please don't panic if the inspector does not call you right at the prescribed time. Give them a window there of 15 minutes before or after the inspection time schedule. Now, this slide here presents the tools that will be delivered to your home, and it's the slides that are the top left-hand slide and the top right-hand slide show the tools used when you're using when we're filling out the paper form. And you can see there we've got a tape measure. I'm looking at the upper left-hand slide. We have got a tape measure, and we have a 2-prong circuit tester, and we have a 3-prong GFCI tester. Then, as you can see, we've got the clipboard, and we have the long form there, the 52580A. And then we also have a flashlight and a long probe there to check smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, auxiliary lights, and emergency lights. If you'll go to the bottom left-hand corner of the slide, you'll see bottom right-hand of the slide. I'm going to take you through that one. That is when we're using a DCD, or a data collection device, with a HUD-approved HQS software on it, and that is an iPad right there. And then we have the tools again. We have the tape measure, the 2-prong circuit tester, and the 3-prong GFCI tester, the flashlight, and the long probe for checking auxiliary lights and smoke detectors. If you'll go over to the left-hand bottom slide there, these are some additional tools that are used on inspections. One is a moisture meter, another is a microwave oven detector. There's a thermometer, and there's also a collapsible mirror. You may need to use these types of tools in particular situations that require further examination, but these are not the typical tools, and this you would operate under the guidelines of the inspector if these items needed to be used. But to summarize, the basic tools that will be delivered to you would be the tape measure, the 2-prong electric circuit tester, the GFCI tester, the flashlight, and the long probe for checking auxiliary lights and carbon monoxide detectors, smoke detectors, and emergency lights. Proxy prepares for the RVI. Read and follow, understand the platform login instructions for the Android and the iPhone. Download the preferred application, for example, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, onto a smartphone or tablet before the inspection. Prepare to accept the electronic invitation from the inspector at the scheduled time. Turn off phone notifications that may interrupt the call. Now, if you have an iPhone, we have the instructions there. In settings, you tap on Do Not Disturb, set the manual slide button to green, scroll down to silence, tap next to always to add a check mark. If you're using the Android, go to settings, tap sound, tap Do Not Disturb, slide to off.
And just to note here, if you have a more current version of the software for either iPhone or Android, these may change slightly. So just do whatever is correct for your device, and make sure that you won't get any other calls coming through.
And as you know, as we all know, things with these devices are always changing.
Yeah.
Okay, Proxy prepares for the RVI continued. Okay, use earbuds with an integrated microphone if possible. Set the phone so that there is a small screen view of what the remote inspector sees. Clean the camera lens and screens for maximum clarity. Tap the platform screen, i.e. Zoom or Microsoft Teams. tap the camera icon, tap the reverse camera icon in the small view that the inspector sees. Have all the required tools necessary for the inspection: tape measure, flashlight, two-prong outlet tester, GFCI outlet tester. And if I know I didn't mention this before, but GFCI stands for ground fault circuit interrupter. Anytime electricity goes where it's not supposed to go, it's called a fault, and this is able to detect that.
And then you need that long stick. So these are just all the things that we saw in the pictures before.
That is correct.
Right, and you can use that long stick to poke the test buttons on the smoke detectors, CO detectors, etc.
That's correct. That's correct.
And this is a good point about the background noise. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. So don't start your laundry running right before the inspection is supposed to start.
That's correct. That's correct. And then the last one there is allow 60 minutes for the inspection.
Right.
Conducting the RVI overview again, or continue, we have the remote inspector receives the video streaming and directs the proxy around the unit, common areas, building exterior, site, and neighborhood. The remote inspector records data on the HUD forms or the DCD. The proxy walks through the unit in a clockwise direction, i.e. going to the right, starting at the unit entry door and inspecting the first floor, then the second floor, then the basement.
Tom, what if you have an attic? Do you inspect the attic too?
If it's a finished attic area, yes. If it's not finished, we don't go up into the attic.
Okay.
You know, we don't want anyone standing on step ladders or extension ladders to do the inspection. Safety is utmost priority.
Okay.
The next one is the proxy tells the inspector the number of bedrooms and the location. That's very important. For example, first floor, left rear bedroom. In that particular, and the reason for this is if we have to come back and do a re-inspection, we want to make sure we are re-inspecting the correct room, and by listing the location of that room, that helps us to determine that. The next one, the proxy walks around the common areas used by the tenant, the building exterior, and the site and neighborhood. Now, what we mean by that, if the tenant is using elevator A to get to and from their apartment, we'll inspect elevator A. If there are elevator B, C, and D in the building, we don't inspect those because the tenant is not using that elevator. The last one there is the proxy restores their preferred settings on their phone after the inspection and the calls are completed. Now, conducting the RVI, Section 8 HQS protocol. Use the Form 52580 booklet long form or the HUD Form 52580 inspection checklist short form or a DCD loaded with the HUD approved HQS software. This is what the inspector uses. HQS requires the following areas to be inspected, and this is where the proxy will help the inspector through these areas. And the areas that we're inspecting are the living room, the kitchen, bathroom, bedrooms, other rooms such as a den or a laundry area, secondary rooms used for living. That would be, for example, a basement. We have the building exterior, and then we have heating and plumbing, and we also have health and safety. So these are the areas on the inspection form that we inspect.
And just so the folks know, each of these areas will have a video that will go over exactly how to conduct the inspections in these locations.
Step by step, conducting the RVI. The remote inspector calls the proxy at the scheduled time and date, plus or minus 15 minutes, as I mentioned before. The proxy receives the email with the video link and opens the platform. The inspector instructs the proxy to switch the camera to the outward, i.e. rear-facing camera. The proxy and the inspector verify that the video streaming connection is good. Lost connection, what happens? Tell the proxy, please do not panic. It does happen. If the video freezes, wait for streaming to return. If the RVI inspector drops the call, wait for the inspector to return. Just have some patience and wait. It may take a few minutes to reestablish that connection. If the proxy drops the call, sign back in. If a drop call cannot be reconnected, the inspection will be completed on site at a later time.
So the next slide is a very short video clip of Tom beginning an inspection as a remote inspector working with a proxy.
All right, remote video inspection, date April 25th, 2021. Address is 18120 East Stone Ridge Street, South Bend, Indiana, St. Joseph County, Indiana, 46637. It is a condominium type housing construction. The remote inspector is Thomas Feehan, and the proxy is Colette Kettrick, otherwise known as Coco.
So that's just how you would start the process of the inspection, right, Tom?
That is correct. Conducting the RVI step-by-step continued. This slide is showing that the proxy follows the directions of the remote inspector, and that's just so very important. Just your job is just to follow those instructions and directions. The inspector tells the proxy to move to the street and point the camera at the front of the unit. Here again, we need to identify what unit we are inspecting. The inspector tells the proxy to move towards the unit and point the camera at the address of the assisted unit. The inspector records the unit address on the HUD form or in the DCD.
Okay, next we have another short clip of the next step of the inspection.
It's right here.
Okay, that's good.
And that's actually Unit E, Stone Ridge Street.
Privacy is a very, very important part of the Housing Choice Voucher RVI program. We do not want any personal information displayed in the video. So the remote HQS inspector and the proxy will make every attempt to provide adequate privacy safeguards for the protection of personally identifiable information. In other words, we will not be showing any family pictures in the video, anything that would indicate identification of someone living there. The remote inspector and proxy must make sure that no personal or easily identifiable information appears in the video. And I want to stress this very, very emphatically, that we are very serious about this. HUD is very serious about this. No personal or easily identifiable information should appear in the video.
So what we're looking at, you're saying this should not be in the video, this picture of the address board.
That is correct. That would show the people's names, but and the name of the tower there.
Okay, we have another clip that's about the inspection starting at the entry door for the unit.
All right, now walk towards the front door. That's good. Now open up the storm door.
I'm going in.
Okay, and then when you go in, close the door. And then show me. Go ahead and shut the door and lock it. All right, now step back and let me see the locked door. And I want to see if there's any daylight around the door. Okay, that's good.
So, Tom, I'm noticing that it can be maybe a little challenging for the proxy to manage the holding the phone with the camera in it and doing all the tasks you're asking for. Is that, how do you suggest that the proxy manages that?
Well, first of all, just relax and don't panic. And if you need to adjust the phone and so that you can open a door or open a window. Just do the best you can. The inspector will guide you on how to do that. And if the inspector doesn't feel comfortable with what they've seen so far, they may ask you to try it again. So just don't panic and just follow the instructions of the inspector.
Well, thank you, Tom. This has been incredibly helpful. I hope that everybody finds this useful. And I go ahead and turn your video back on so we can say hello to the folks. And I would like to just make sure there'll be a series of these recorded trainings available for you to watch at your convenience on the HUD Exchange. And they're going to cover, one module will cover the interior rooms. That's the living room, kitchen, and bathroom. Another will cover the other interior rooms. That's the bedrooms, the other rooms used for living, and then any secondary rooms. So those other rooms are like the dens and I don't know, sewing room. Does anybody have a sewing room? And any rooms in the basement. And then there'll be another training that will cover these general systems you find in the units: electric, plumbing, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, commonly known as HVAC, and the exterior of the building. And the last one will cover general health and safety. So all the common areas that the tenants use, and the site and the overall neighborhood, not the entire neighborhood, but what's immediately adjacent to those units. So we really appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. And Tom, anything else, any parting words for us?
No, I'm happy to have been able to do this video with you, and I encourage you to enjoy the next 4 videos on how to do a remote video inspection.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Bye-bye.